Okay, ladies, today's Mothers of a Nation class, dealing with our mother, Rachel Imenu. We have a beautiful opportunity to learn today about this tremendous tzaddiket. The learning for this week is dedicated by the Torah Center Silver Donors David and Joseph Cohen. Loving memory, Nishmat, their mother, Annette Cohen, Hannah Bat Leah Alea Shalom. Today's class has not yet been sponsored. If anyone would like to sponsor today's class. For Rachel, what? Rachel Bat Leah for Zivug. How special is that? We're learning about Rachel. It's for Rachel. Next week's class is about Leah. Rachel Bat Leah. Okay, wonderful. You know, was the grandmother Sarah or Rivka? Let's go. Let's collect the whole set. Okay, let's get ready to rumble. So ladies, I have an interesting way of presenting this to you today. What we're going to do is we're going to start right at the beginning. The very first time Rachel Imenu is mentioned in the Torah. Vayishak Yaakov leRachel, vayisa et kolo vayefk. Yaakov Avinu is commanded by his father to go to this new place, to the place where his family came from, and to get married to someone from there. Yaakov Avinu sets off, and as he approaches the town, he sees on the outskirts of the town, at the well, he sees there's a giant rock on the mouth of the well. He engages in a conversation with the shepherds. Why are they not rolling off the stone? Blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, the music, starts playing, and Rachel Imenu walks in. He takes one look at Rachel Imenu, and the pasuk says he knew it was going to be her. Vayishak Yaakov Rachel. Yaakov kisses Rachel. Vayisa et kolo vayefk, and he raises his voice and he cries. Interesting first date, wouldn't you say? Right? He sees her and he's crying already. I don't know. If I were your dating coach, I would tell you red flag. Says Rashi. I'm only going to make it worse. Don't worry. Says Rashi. Vayefk. Why is he crying? Excellent. Our Talmidei Chachama. Vayefk. And he was crying. Why? The Fisha Tzafa Beruach HaKodesh. Because Yaakov could see with his Ruach HaKodesh, with prophecy, She'ena nechneset imo lekvura, that she was not going to be buried with him. So imagine our premise. Yaakov meets Rachel. He kisses her. He's very upset. She says, "Why are you upset?" Getting a little bit weirded out. The guy's crying on the first date. And he says, no, it's not weird. It's, let me explain. And what's the explanation? I'm crying because we're not going to be buried together. If a guy talks to you about marriage on the first date, you're probably weirded out, right?
Yeah, you run away.
Run away, right? Imagine the guy's talking to you about your grandchildren. Imagine the guy's talking to you about burial plots. Right? What is going on over here? Yaakov Avinu's crying at their first meeting. They're not even married yet. And what is he crying about? That they're not going to be buried together? What's happening here? So we have to kind of take a look a little bit and understand what this conversation with Yaakov is really about. This conversation that begins their relationship. And as well, understand the underlying meaning behind what Yaakov Avinu was saying to Rachel, why he was crying, what was the representation of being buried or not being buried with her. And then we will truly have an understanding of what Rachel and Yaakov, the relationship was built on, and as well, what was the standout feature of Rachel Imenu, so we could all learn from her and tap into that in our own spiritual DNA. So we have a pasuk, and the pasuk tells us, fast forward, Yaakov Avinu marries Leah. He marries Rachel. Leah gives birth to children. Yeah, Rachel is unfortunately unable to have children. And then one day, suddenly, Vatomer Rachel el Leah. And Rachel says to Leah, Teni na li medudae benech. She sees that Leah's son Reuven has come back with these flowers for his mom. She says, please, can I have the flowers? Vatomer la, and Leah says to Rachel, Hame'at kachtech et ishi. Is it not enough that you took my husband? V'lakacht gam medudae beni. You're going to take now the flowers that my son's bringing me also? Vatomer Rachel, and Rachel says, Lachen, for this, yishkav imecha halayla tachat dudae benech. Let Yaakov come to you tonight instead of to me. Yaakov Avinu would spend time with each of the imahot. So Rachel says, give me these flowers. And if you do, then Yaakov is supposed to come spend time with me tonight. Instead, he'll spend time with you. Vayavo Yaakov ben hasadeh. Yaakov comes from the field. Ba'erev, in the evening, vatetzeh Leah lekrato. Leah goes out to greet him. Vatomer, and she says, Elai tavo. Tonight, you come to my tent, ki sachor secharticha, because I've paid for you to be with me instead, bidudae beni, for the price of the dudaim of my son, vayishkav ima balaylahu. And Yaakov was there with Leah on that night. Now rabbis actually tell us that Leah was rewarded, that evening that they spent together resulted in the birth of Yisachar, of the child for Leah. What is going on over here with Rachel? What is going on with these flowers? What is taking place? What are we noticing? What are we seeing? And what are we learning? Rashi on the spot tells us something interesting. He tells us, Lachen, therefore, Yishkav imecha halayla. What does it mean that Leah said to Rachel, let him go with you? Lefi shezilzela, since she was mizalzel. What does it mean, lizalzel?
Don't take care of him.
To not appreciate.
Yeah.
To what do you say? You did the hand motion, but like, what are the words?
Mizalzel, it's like, don't take care about somebody. It doesn't pay attention to the person.
You didn't pay attention, you belittled it.
Yeah.
Because you belittled spending time. You decide you didn't appreciate, you belittled something, you didn't pay it. You didn't pay it the proper respect.
Exactly.
Since she was mizalzel b'mishkav tzaddik, to lie with the tzaddik, lo zachetali kaverimo. She did not merit to be buried with him. We know Rachel is buried where? In Kever Rachel, on the side of the road.
Yes.
Who's buried with Yaakov Avinu? In the Marat HaMachpelah? Leah, not Rachel. Because she did not merit, she was mizalzel, she belittled being with the tzaddik, so she did not merit to be with him, buried eternally. That sounds like a little bit of a difficult, a little harsh, thing here. What's going on over here? Yeah, not only that, let's add to this. It sounds like she needed to lose the zechut of being buried with him. That means, when you say it's your position to lose, you have the job. You're the front runner. It's your position to lose. Rachel would have deserved to be with him. Why? Because she was the primary wife of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu wanted to be with her. Yaakov Avinu was fooled by Lavan, wound up marrying Leah, and in the end said, okay, I'm going to love you. We'll build family, we'll build Am Yisrael. But his primary choice was Rachel. She was the default to be buried together with Yaakov Avinu, but she's not. Why? Because she's mizalzel, she belittles, she humiliates, she embarrasses being with the tzaddik. That's what it says. Mizalzel, I gave 3 different meanings to it. Belittle. Don't give proper honor or appreciation. Okay? So, ladies, we have in front of us a lot of different things over here. But I want to try and understand, as we go through this, a thread that seems to be running through what all these things are really teaching us. Let me, for 1 second, let me try and work on this with you together. Before we do that, there's one last question we need to deal with. We'll come to that. There's one last question we need to deal with. Okay? What did we just learn now? She didn't merit to be with him in burial because she rejected being with him. Hashem says, you don't want to be with him? Okay, you don't merit it. One problem. We're going to fast forward. So we started in the beginning, we went to the middle, and now let's go to the end. When Yaakov Avinu was about to die, on his deathbed he calls for Yosef HaTzadik. Who is Yosef? Whose son? Rachel's son. He says, Yosef, I'm going to ask you something. I'm going to ask you to bury me in Israel. But before I do, I know that what I'm asking of you is going to be difficult for you. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, Ve'ekberasham. Rashi says, and I buried your mother there. What does Rashi say? Yaakov says to Yosef, I know that I'm asking you to take me to Israel from Egypt. And I know sheyesh bilibcha ta'arumot alai, that you're upset at me. Because when it came to your mother, I buried her on the side of the road. I didn't I didn't even take her into the city. I buried her on the roadside. Aval da lecha, Yaakov says, but no. Shalpi adibur kivarti Hasham. I buried her there because of a prophecy from God. That she will one day be as a help to her sons, to her great-great-grandchildren. When the Jewish people will be exiled from Israel and they'll be led in chains. They're going to pass by as the Romans are going to take them into exile. As they're going to be dragged away as slaves. They're going to pass by her kever because she's buried on the roadside. And they'll pray as they're being pulled past. Yotzet Rachel al kivra. Rachel will go out by her grave. Ubocha umevakeshet alehem rachamim, and she will cry and ask for mercy for her children and grandchildren. Shneemar, like the pasuk says, Kol berama nishma, a voice is heard on high. Rachel mevaka al banea. Rachel cries for her sons. V'akadosh baruch hu mishiva. And what does God say to Rachel crying for her children? Yesh sachar lef'ulatech. There will be great reward for your merit. Neum Hashem v'shavu banim legvulam. And your sons will return to their boundaries, to their country. You will merit to see your children return to Israel in reward for what you've done. Yaakov Avinu basically is telling Yosef, I did not bury her there because I wanted to. I did not bury her there because I was lazy. I buried her there because there was a prophecy. And Hashem told me to bury her there so that she'll be there for her children years in the future when they're being taken into Galut. The problem is we seem to have a contradiction between one Rashi and the other. Rashi says that she's being punished because she didn't attach the appropriate value to being with the Sadiq. So Hashem says, you don't want to be with the Sadiq? No problem. You won't be with the Sadiq. The second opinion seems to be saying something else. That actually it wasn't a punishment. It was the fact that the Jewish people in the future would need her. Are you okay?
The word I went to different direction.
So what do we do with this contradiction? Ladies, I want to share with you what is, to me, one of the most powerful things that I'd ever learned. To me, actually was so powerful that I actually named my daughter Rachel after this class. Let's try and understand and take a little bit of a deeper dive. Yaakov meets Rachel. He knows b'nevuah that this is the person for him. On the spot. In fact, the Sefer Avodat Yisrael says that this moment that it says in the Pasuk, Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel, it was not a physical affection that he was expressing here. He was not kissing a girl like, you see in the movies. And he says, what's the proof? The proof is that immediately following that kiss, it says, Vayisa et kolo vayevkin, he raised his voice and he cries. And what does Rashi tell us? Why is he crying? Because he had a nivu'ah that she would not be buried with him. If the first thing is not an appropriate, holy thing, what follows it is not prophecy from God. It must be that this was not a physical desire, it was not drawn from lust or from temptation. It must have been the holiest thing ever, because what follows it is a prophecy. We have a teaching that says, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. Right? What does a mitzvah bring in its wake? Another mitzvah. Avera, a sin, goreret avera. We learned in Pirkei Avot, a sin, what does it drag in its wake? Another sin. The Sefrei Musar say, if you are not sure about something, whether it was a mitzvah, sometimes you did something, you're not sure, was it a good thing or a bad thing? The Sefrei Musar say, you want to know how you find out? Go see what happened afterwards. What happened after you did that? Was the next thing that happened a mitzvah or avera? That will tell you what the prior thing was. Because if it's true going forward, it's also true going backwards. Okay? Says Avodat Yisrael, if the next thing that happened was a prophecy, then that was... So Yaakov understands that Rachel and his connection is a holy thing. It's something which is going to bring tremendous benefit to the world. It's going to raise the spiritual level of the entire world. And then he sees that she's not going to be buried with him. Yaakov Avinu is not concerned on the first date whether or not they're going to be buried together. Rather, Yaakov understands that if they're not going to be buried together, then that must mean that there's something about their relationship which was flawed. Something about their connection which was flawed. If he is wholeheartedly giving himself over for her, it must be that in their relationship, there is something more important to her than him. Is that clear?
No, it's not clear.
Let's understand. Yaakov knows that there's nothing more important to him than her. Therefore, if they're not meriting to be buried together, that means that it must mean that from her, there's something that she desires, she wants, she values more than him. So in the Vayishak, in the strength of Yaakov's connection for Rachel, he cries because he knows that the way he feels about her is not the same the way that she feels about him. And what is it that Rachel values more? Let's try and understand this, because this is so profound. We're going to understand something today which is so profound, okay? Rabbeinu Bachya writes that this flower was called the flower of jasmine. That's what some people say. Other opinions say it was ginseng. Okay? Why? What are they both aiming for in deciding which flower it was? Who cares if it was a rose, a lily, jasmine, ginseng? It doesn't make a difference. Rabbeinu Bachya says that this flower, whatever it is, it grows in the shape of a human. So it's got like a bulbous top, and then it's got things growing out to the top and the bottom. It looks like a head, arms, legs. Says Rabbeinu Bachya, and why is that important? Because it is, this flower, whatever it is beneficial for fertility. Rachel is not someone who likes flowers and is saying, I'm trading my husband for flowers. Rachel is someone who's desperate to have children. Suddenly, this rare flower that you can't find, whose son found it out in the wild? Leah's son. She sees Leah, who's already got 5 children. Her son brings her this flower. She begs her sister, she says, please can I have the flower? What's Leah's response? Is it not enough that you took my husband, now you want my flowers too? Strange comment from Leah, by the way. We'll have to understand. We're getting there. We'll have to understand exactly what Leah is really saying here. What is she really saying? But we'll get first Rachel. Rachel says, I need this flower. I need to have children. So what is Rachel trading being with Yaakov for? Children. She's trading being with Yaakov for children. Let's try and understand now. What does the word zilzila mean? We said it means belittle. We said it means doesn't value. We said it means a lot of things. Didn't respect, didn't appreciate. But what is the root of the word lizalzel or mizalzel? The root of the word is zol. Cheap. If you go to Israel, every single store is something zol. Right? Every single supermarket. עכשיו בהיפר זול, הכי זול בארץ. סופר זול, זול יותר מאשר זול. You know, that's, everything is zol. Zol means cheap. Zilzela means not that she ridiculed. It can mean that. Not that she put down. But zilzela means that with regard to what Rachel said, I'd rather have, she put being with Yaakov on a lower level than having children. Rachel Imenu, understand this, is not saying to Yaakov, I don't value you. She's saying, there's something higher that I live for. And now we're going to really get into it. Okay? Now we're really going to get into it. So when it says over here that she did not merit to be buried with him because she did not show that he was her highest value, okay? We have to pull that apart. What is the value of being with a tzaddik? You know, we say it in Pirkei Avot, Oy l'rasha, woe to the rasha, Oy l'shcheno, woe to his neighbor. What does that mean, Oy l'rasha, Oy l'shcheno? Woe to a rasha, woe to his neighbor. I mean, I think the Ukraine has its own opinion about what that Mishnah means. Woe to rasha and woe to its neighbor. But what do you think it means?
The Russia,
It's חברו, more חברו than...
The rasha what?
the Russia attracts bad.
Attracts bad?
And then, and he is bad, and it goes over to the neighbor, it influences the neighbor.
Influences a neighbor.
Yeah, if you show up with a rasha, you also too.
Okay?
It's like, ask me.
A rasha as your neighbor, there goes the neighborhood.
You become rasha, yeah.
There was once a brilliant young scholar who came to his classroom, and his Rebbe saw that he'd ripped off one side of the Gemara, one side of the page. And he says, I don't understand what the Tosafot says. So I ripped it out. So the rabbi said to him, but when you ripped it out, you didn't only rip out the Tosafot on this side, you ripped out also the Tosafot on the other side. Exactly. So he said, Oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno.
Can I ask you though?
Obviously it's a joke.
What's the value of being with the tzaddikus?
So what's the value of being with a tzaddik?
That his goodness.
You're raised up. Rachel says that I value being with the Sadiq tremendously. But there's something that I value even more than being with the Sadiq. And what does that mean, as we said? There's something I value even more than my own growth, to Ish. Something I value even more than my own building up. And that is building up a family. Not just randomly a family. Our Imahot understood that they were building Am Yisrael. Rachel chooses, therefore, she chooses another before she chooses herself. That's what Rachel is choosing. Okay? I want everyone to understand this. And once we understand this principle, we understand that therefore Rachel doesn't merit, quote unquote, to be buried with Yaakov because there was something she chose above Yaakov. The future of Am Yisrael. She chose another over herself. Now with these glasses, we look back at what we just read. Those contradictory Rashis that seem to be disagreeing with one another are actually operating completely in tandem. Says Yaakov to Yosef, I have a prophecy. That's why she was buried on the side of the road. You know why? So that when her children go into exile, she could pray for them. It's not that she was punished, so therefore she was buried away from Yaakov. Rather, that God gave her the opportunity to do in her death what she had chosen to do with her life. She chose her children. She chose Am Yisrael. God said, okay, you're putting Am Yisrael before you put yourself? No problem. I'm going to let you have that. And you will save Am Yisrael with your kivura al em haderech on the side of the road with kever Rachel. And to this day, it is a source, a place where Am Yisrael goes to pray. And even though, this is astonishing, even though we can no longer, we don't have full access to the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, we still have full access to kever Rachel.
Yeah.
And if you've been to kever Rachel recently, you'll realize that it is as odd that we have kever Rachel as us having the Ma'arat
I
HaMachpelah.
actually have more important today.
There's like literally, it's a walled road. You're driving down a road that is walled on both sides. The security required to get to kever Rachel is astonishing. If we as a people have managed to have kever Rachel, why can't we have the Ma'arat HaMachpelah? The answer is because of this Rashi.
You won't have.
God says,
You won't have.
you will never lose that. She will always be there for you.
Yeah.
And even though the Avot HaKiddushim are in some ways off limits to us in Hebron, Rachel, you're never losing. Because she gave her whole life for Am Yisrael. Now I want to try and understand where this comes from. The first minute Yaakov Avinu recognizes, he says, I'm going to give my everything for you. But you know something? I'm not number one on your list, I'm number two. And understanding that, we're understanding that that doesn't just mean in terms of love for her husband, or love for Yaakov. Yaakov is not upset about that. He understands though, he gets it. But there's something that she values more, and that is the future of Am Yisrael that they would build together. So she comes to Leah and says, if I have to trade, I'll trade.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Very strong.
Number one, Leah becomes pregnant from that union. Number two, Rachel becomes pregnant.
Wow.
So Leah becomes pregnant because she trades for Yaakov. Rachel becomes pregnant because she trades away from Yaakov. What's going on? You see, in our universe, there's a right and a wrong. There's the right move and the wrong move. But really, Rachel and Leah are expressing their truest, not just nature, but greatness with this exact move. And we'll try and unpack part two of this story, maybe next week a little bit. I don't want to focus only on this. But let's try and understand this unbelievable koach of Rachel that grants her this gift, this essential reality that becomes Kever Rachel, that personifies this woman.
She said to Yaakov also one time, if you don't give me children, meta.
We're going to get there. Well, let's try and understand another stage. I'm jumping around Rachel's life to give you these snippets that show you, that weave together this tapestry, hopefully for all of you. And if you want, Be'ezrat Hashem, afterwards I can send you a sheet as well with the various sources. I would have printed it off had I thought of it before. We all know that when Leah is switched for Rachel, so Yaakov had prepared for that eventuality. Yaakov is like, listen, I know this guy Lavan is a trickster. I have to make sure that I do everything I can, that I wind up with the woman that I worked so hard for, and that he doesn't do a switcheroonie. First of all, holy cow, what a relationship with your father-in-law. So what does he say? He says, Rachel, bitcha, haktana, I want to marry Rachel, your daughter, the young one. Commentators say, Rachel, and if you're going to tell me and try to marry me off to some other girl called Rachel, right? Bitcha, I want the one that's your daughter. And if you're going to try and swap Aruni, your daughter, for the other one, Haktana, the younger one. The Midrash tells us, what did Lavan do? He went up to the Torah the week before the wedding, and he changed Leah's name to Rachel. And then he married off Rachel Bitcha Haktana. She's not the younger one, she's the older one. But Leah was shorter than Rachel. So he said, this is Rachel Bitcha Haktana, the shorter one. What a Ramai. Anyway, our rabbis tell us that Yaakov was not taking any chances. So he made a condition. He came up with a plan to be able to ensure that he would wind up with Rachel. He gave her simanim, he gave her signs that she should be able to identify herself as being his wife. So Yaakov gets married. In fact, it tells us that at the wedding of Yaakov, first of all, Lavan, very religious all of a sudden, make sure that the daughter is very covered with a veil. What do you mean, Rabbi? It's an Iyut rabbi, We need the mechitza, the dancing has to be very separate. All that, he's doing all these things to make sure. It tells us actually that the people of the town were very afraid of Lavan. He was a criminal. So he told them, if anyone, lets Yaakov know what's going on, they're going to have to deal with me. And the Midrash tells us that the people were trying to communicate with Yaakov that there was a plot afoot. So what did they say? They were singing. It says they were singing, hey lay. That's what it says. Like to tell him, hey Leah, this is Leah. That's what they were singing. Yaakov didn't fathom that that's what they were talking about. But hey lay. And I was just trying to think what that is. And I wondered if maybe that's the origin for what we do when we go, hey. Maybe that's where it's from. He li is he Leah, is he lay, is he li.
They didn't have the Ashkenazi.
I can't answer for the Ashkenazim over here. They were in Aram Naharaim. They weren't in Russia.
My mom.
They were in the Middle East. That's where they got married. Okay, yeah, I can't tell you what they did in Lithuania. Okay, either way, they're trying to communicate who the woman is, but Yaakov doesn't understand. So he thinks that who's he married? Rachel. The pasuk says, "Vayihi baboker," and it was in the morning. V'hine hi Leah, and behold, it was Leah. Says Rashi, "Aval." What does it mean? Behold, she was Leah. Aval balayla lo hayta Leah. In the nighttime, as far as he was concerned, there wasn't Leah. Lefi shemasar Yaakov lerachel simanim. Yaakov gave over to Rachel simanim, signs. Ukishira'ata Rachel, and when Rachel saw shemachnisin lo Leah, that they're bringing in Leah, Amra, she said to herself, Achshav tikalem achoti. My sister is going to be humiliated in public in front of everyone. I can't bear for that to happen. Amdau masralah otan simanim. She gave over the simanim that Yaakov gave her to her sister. Let me make it worse. One opinion is the simanim was that he taught Yaakov, that Yaakov taught Rachel a secret code. Rachel came to Leah and she told Leah, listen, there's a secret code over here. Right? Leah gives Yaakov the secret code and they get married. The problem is that if you look what happens when she asks for the flowers, she says, is it not enough that you took my husband? Now you want the flowers? I mean, I could imagine Rachel being snap. Like, no. Are you joking? I took your husband? So how does Leah say that? Maybe she's just angry, simple understanding. She's upset. So if she says something doesn't, of course, that's not enough for us, right? Try to understand, how could Leah have said that? There's another opinion, which I think is profound, that what was the sign that Yaakov taught Leah, taught Rachel? He taught her the laws of family purity. And Leah actually didn't give over any sign to Yaakov. He just saw that she was behaving the way that one would if they knew the laws of family purity. She went to the mikveh. She held herself the way she was supposed to in getting married, in touching, not touching after, in the relations, etc., etc. So, according to this understanding, Rachel didn't tell Leah that these were the signs that Yaakov gave her. She just said, look, I went to a class. I learned the laws of family purity. These are them. So she actually allowed her sister to be able to get married without even realizing that she was a second choice. And that's what Leah says to her sister. Is it not enough that you came into my marriage after, right? You're taking my husband? She actually believed it. Ladies, the third explanation, which doesn't help us for this, for the kach techet ishti, but it helps us for the other side, the other part, is that is even harder to understand on the idea that the sign was that Yaakov would ask Rachel to speak to him in her voice. So according to the third opinion, that when Yaakov brought Leah home, Rachel hid in the room, and when Yaakov spoke to her, she spoke back. And then she left. So she had to become, imagine how hard that is for someone not just to kind of roll with the punches, but to actually have to be a part of this process in order to make sure that you're protecting your sister's honor. My friends, whichever one of these ideas we look at, what we're seeing over here is Rachel saying, I know the value of being with Yaakov Avinu. But if the price of me achieving my level, my greatness, my beracha in life, is to step on somebody else, is to humiliate someone else, is to break somebody else, I'm not prepared to do that. Rachel puts somebody else and their needs and their feelings before her very own. And this thing that we see, that she's willing to give Yaakov up for the children, for the future, is not just something that she feels with regards to kids, to children, to Am Yisrael, to the Shivatim, but it's rather her understanding of the whole world. What does a person exist in this world for? Do we fight for ourselves? Or do we fight for another? What price are we willing to pay in order to advance our own aims and our own greatness? Fascinating. Now I think we can understand what this means. But before we go to the final level in understanding the power of Rachel, I want to go back now. Leah says, "Hame'at kachtech et ishi." She does not mean to Rachel. She's not saying to her sister, I don't know the history. I don't remember that he was supposed to marry you. Leah is saying to her sister something very, very, sensitive, emotionally raw. She says to her sister, he loves you more than he loves me. You've got him. The one thing that I have over you is that I've given him children. Hame'at kachtech et ishi. And now you want to take also duda'e beni. Literally it translates as the flowers of my son. But perhaps a deeper understanding of what Leah is intending is, do you also want to take duda'e beni, the flowering, the beauty of the fact that I have children? What will I have if you have that as well? You look at Leah, the way she's naming her children. Reuven, that my husband will see that I have a son. Shimon, Levi, Hapam yilaveni ishchi. Now my husband will come, will escort me. Leah is sharing the pain that she has in seeing that she's not first choice, so to speak. And Rachel is keenly aware of that. But Rachel also understands something else. And this is where it gets mind-blowing. Because when Rachel allows Leah to marry Yaakov, we have a problem. We have an issue. Technically, for Yaakov to marry Rachel is a big problem. Why? Because the Torah does not allow a person to marry two sisters. Not allowed to. We know the Avot HaKedoshim, it's before the Torah was given. So they were never commanded to do that. But the Avot HaKedoshim, they took on themselves to marry, to fulfill all of the mitzvot that the Torah eventually would give. Even if they were not obligated yet. They did that out of their own free will. Okay? So how could Yaakov do this? Why was he allowed to marry? Her? Understand that Rachel, therefore, when she gives up Yaakov, as far as she's concerned, she hasn't given up marrying him first. She's given up marrying him at all. Understanding that her sister was going to be humiliated and not being willing to go down the aisle and trample on her sister's honor publicly means that Rachel says, I will forego my own lifetime of happiness if my happiness comes at the expense of this. Why does Yaakov indeed marry Rachel? The Malbim and others write that Yaakov understood with Nivu'ah that he was supposed to have 12 tribes. We know that they all knew this, including the women, right? Rachel, Leah, they knew. Why? Because when Leah becomes pregnant with yet another baby, she says to herself, I know that there's 12 tribes. I know that Bilhah and Zilpah each have 2. That's 4. I have already, 6. If I have another one, then Rachel won't even have as many as Bilhah and Zilpah. She'll have the least of everybody. she prays to God that her baby should not be a boy, that she should have a girl. So it would not be one of the 12 tribes, so that her sister would have the opportunity. And Dinah and Yosef effectively switch places. Now listen to this, because this is imperative. That means that Yaakov understands that the Shebatim are supposed to come from Rachel and Leah. At that point in time, the Avot's keeping of the mitzvot was not mandated by God or the Torah. They hadn't received it yet. The reason why they were keeping it was because they were tuned in to what the spirituality of the world required. And at that point, the nature of the world was such that it needed Am Yisrael to be born into it. So Yaakov knows that if Shebatim are going to come from Rachel, then he's allowed to marry Rachel. Correct? Now you understand something unbelievable. Let's read this pasuk together. Vayihi betzet nafsha. And it was when her soul was departing. Rachel is dying. Why is she dying? She's had a difficult pregnancy with Binyamin, and she's dying in childbirth. Vayihi betzet nafsha, and she's dying in childbirth kimeta. Vatikra shemo ben oni, and she calls her son Ben Oni, which means son of my strength. Ve'aviv, and his father, kara lo Binyamin. Yaakov calls the child Binyamin. Only time, by the way, only one of the 12 sons that was called by the father and not by the mother. So of all the children that you're going to pick a name, Yaakov, you pick this one that your wife names as she's dying, and you change it. He didn't call Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yisachar, none of them. Only Ben Oni changes to Binyamin. My friends, I want you to understand something unbelievable. Something unbelievable. As Binyamin is being born, and Rachel is saying this, she names him, Yaakov changes the name. Why is she dying as Binyamin is entering the world? The answer is, because Yaakov Avinu is only allowed to be married to Rachel and Leah in order to bring about the Shvatim, the tribes. The second Binyamin comes into the world, what does that mean about Rachel? She needs to go. Are you understanding this? So someone once asked me, why couldn't he divorce her? And the Zohar tells us that a neshama of someone whose husband passes away, they're together forever in Olam Haba. But a neshama of a husband and wife that get divorced, the divorce is tearing apart the bond between husband and wife. Death does not separate husband and wife. Divorce does. So Rachel can't get divorced. She doesn't want to get divorced from Yaakov Avinu. But she wants to have children. Understand now what it means, Vayihi betzet nafsha. She's dying because Binyamin is being born. What does she say to her husband? Vayikra shemo. She calls her son Ben Oni, son of my suffering. This son is the reason why she's suffering. It's the reason why she's going to be separated from Yaakov Avinu. It's the reason why she's going to pass away. But Yaakov calls his son Binyamin. He says, Rachel, this child is going to take your midah, this strength that you have, to put things, others, kedusha, before yourself, and it's going to entrench it forever in the Jewish people. This is not son of suffering. This is son of my right hand. Right hand is always associated in Judaism. Yemin Adonai romema, Yemin Adonai oseh chayil. God's right hand is upheld. God's right hand does great deeds. Yeah, the Hashem takes us out with his right hand from Egypt. It denotes and describes a tremendous amount of strength. Yaakov says this is a tremendous strength in the Jewish people. So now we start to realize how all these pieces come together. Rachel knows what's going on. Rachel understands what it means to give it away. But Rachel says, even if it costs me being with Yaakov forever, I can't do that at the expense of my sister. Ladies, now that you know everything you know, I'm going to read you the sequence of Pisukim, and you'll see each one of the sentences jump off the page at you. The first sentence is the one that we read. Vayihi betzet nafsha, and her soul is departing. Ki meta, for she was dying. Vatikra shemo ben Oni, and her father calls him Benyamin. What's the next pasuk? Vatamot Rachel, and Rachel dies. Vatikaver bederech Ephrata, and she's buried on the side of the road in Ephrata hi Bet Lachem. What did I tell you before? Why was she buried in that place? Because she had chosen her children over herself. So the next sentence after, she dies upon giving birth to Binyamin, which only happens because of that sacrifice. Hashem says, here's your reward, not your punishment. She's buried in the place where when Am Yisrael comes out into Galut, she's there. Rachel Imenu. What's the next sentence? What I said to you earlier about Hebron. Vayatzev Yaakov matzeva al kivrata. And Yaakov sets a matzeva, the famous thing that we know, al kivrata, upon her kever. Hu matzevat kever Rachel, kivrat Rachel. That is the kever Rachel that we all know ad hayom, until today. We would never lose access to that kever because of this. Ladies, this idea, this power that we have inside of ourselves to not seek always to have the world and the planets revolve around us, but to become a force of good in the world, to help things revolve, to help ourselves be the thing that revolves things around others, is a power that Rachel Imenu births in the Jewish people. That's what Yaakov Avinu notices in the very first minute that he meets Rachel. Vayishak Yaakov leRachel, vayefk. Why? Because he saw that she would not be buried with him. I wonder, after Yaakov saw that, did he cry tears of sadness or tears of joy and pride in the fact that this is who he would get to be with? Ladies, Vishavu banim legvulam. We should be zocher to see in the zechut of Rachel Imenu, the shavim returning legvulam to their domain, to their place. My friends, what we see from Rachel Imenu is this power is available for the taking. A lot of times, we're very focused on all the things that bring us self-care, and we take care of ourselves, and we put ourselves first. And the crazy thing is, you can take care of other people and have that mean, again, listen carefully, that you are depleted. Depleted. Is self-care a thing? Absolutely. Sure it is. Of course, do you have to take care of yourself? Do any of you, should we be martyrs and always put everyone in front of ourselves, and be empty and running on fumes? Should that be who we are? No. Of course not. You got to help yourself. So what are we learning over here? What are we learning from Rachel? Did Rachel do something correct? The answer is, you know what they say? You can fool some of the people. You can fool all of the people some of the time. Or you can fool some of the people all of the time. But you cannot fool all the people all the time. The follow-up to that sentence is, I don't know who you can fool, but you can't fool your own family.
No.
Who knows the real you? Your family.
Only you.
Everyone else thinks he's the best guy, she's so nice. We see the real person. They come home, throw their shoes off, cursing everyone out, I have to do everything myself, The nice face is reserved, like the fancy clothes for company. That story about this guy, Haziz, passing away. His last few moments on life in earth, and all of a sudden he smells the most delicious sambusak, and he says to his son, he says, go to the kitchen, Your mom's, I can smell your mom's sambusak. She brings in the delicious sambusak. He leans over, he's going to have one last bite of sambusak before he goes. And his wife comes, she says, those are for the funeral. My friends, you could fool a lot of people. You can't fool your family. Rachel says, I've given up so much, Ben Oni. This is the son of my suffering. And her family, Yaakov, says, that's not what this has been. You have shown us not suffering, not martyrdom, but strength. There are people who put others before themselves and wind up empty because of it. And there are people who put others before themselves and wind up full because of it. I was on no sleep for 4 days straight. But during the Shabbat of the Bar Mitzvah, during the celebration of the Bar Mitzvah, dancing on my shoulders, going crazy, unlimited energy. The minute Shabbat was over, people asked me, Rabbi, are you okay?
No, I'm not.
Because when it comes to something like that you love to give, the love and the desire and the energy to love to give, at that point, actually doesn't deplete, it energizes.
Yes.
And that's what Yaakov is correcting Rachel on. It's true. You know something, honey? None of us ever saw the suffering on your face. Now, by the way, someone said earlier, Rachel said, Hava li banim. She says to Yaakov, give me sons. V'im ayin, and if not, meta anochi, I'm going to die. She wasn't saying, I'm going to die. She was saying, I'm going to die. No. If the only reason why she was allowed to be there with him was to have the children, she says to him, if I don't have children, meta anochi. Exactly what happened when she gave birth to Binyamin. Rachel says, if anyone else gets to 12 before that, I'm gone. Ladies, Hashem should bless us. We should be zocheh to exhibit the strengths that our forefathers and our mothers had in all of us. We should be zocheh to realize that we have so much more than we think we have inside of ourselves in terms of taking care of our families, of our husbands, of our spouses, of our community. You think you're up to here, you're up to here, you're up to here. But the more you try, suddenly you realize the more strength you actually have. The less you try, the less you do, the more overwhelmed you are with nothing.
Exactly.
You have one kid, oh my God, I can't deal. You have 10 kids, you're like, oh my God. The same, oh my God. But this one dealt with 10 and this one dealt with 1. Hashem should bless us always to be on maximum output. Rabotai Baruch